Hi there. Welcome back, everyone. Those of you who took part in the first live stream, and welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. I am here with Graham, who's kindly decided, well, offered to come along and give us his wisdom and advice on DNA testing and any other questions you all ask that I don't have the answers for, which, because I certainly don't know everything. And Graham knows a lot that I don't. So the last couple of weeks we've been doing quite a bit on contextual information. So the fourth week when we had our last live stream, it was the getting into looking at different standards in genealogical research and then the DNA. So I was waiting on a lot of those questions to this chat session. So thank you, those of you who stuck around and have come back, for those to be answered. So last week we looked at, as I said, contextual information, lots of things about secondary sources, books, other types of primary sources, interesting discussion about using archives and going off and finding some gems of information, which has been great to hear what everybody's been getting up to. And this week, kind of rounding up with looking at how to present your information and how to save it either online or on your computer and protect it for the future. So it's been rather heartbreaking, those of you who've shared your stories about information that you've lost, but good reminders for the rest of us to make backups and get stuff stored and preserved for the future so that we can pass things down to generations to come. So yeah, and it's the last week of the course, which is amazing. It always flies by very quickly, and it's such great fun to read everybody's discussions on the forums, and everybody's been really quite generous with time and energy and responding to one another. So that's much appreciated, and as always, I've learned something from most of you. So. Okay, well, we've got until about 10:02, so we've got quite a few questions that have come from the forums that people put in both in week 4 and this current week. So we'll start off with those. Graham's going to focus on the DNA questions first and foremost, but you're also able to put in questions using the live stream YouTube question space, and also you can ask questions on Twitter if you're on our course Twitter account. So we'll keep an eye on questions that come in, but in the meantime I will pass over to Graham.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, I think I'm going to start off with the question of ethics. A number of people have concerns and interest in the ethical aspects relating to genetic genealogy. So basically, there are two main aspects to this. One is the data protection, privacy aspect, and the other is the aspect of discovering unexpected relationships when you actually get test results back and your matches list back. So as regards data protection, you may have realised that there are very recent regulations that have been brought in by the European Union called GDPR, and that relates to the control of personal information. So basically, any of the major companies do have quite robust privacy statements. Ancestry, we did have somebody who felt that Ancestry were saying that they owned the DNA of participants for a given number of years. That, as far as I'm aware, is not quite the case, and they should now be adhering to GDPR. Any of the companies who want to deal with customers in Europe really have to comply with that now. So it is much great. It's tightened up a lot on data protection and gives a lot of extra protection to the individual. But do make a point, if you have concerns, at looking closely at the privacy statements from the major companies. And I think you'll find that if you're looking at them now, there's a lot more there than there was previously, because they've been required to tighten up
Yeah.
because of these general data protection regulations that have come in.
I know because I did the Ancestry autosomal test, and they had something that popped up that was about you could sign up for having your DNA used for these research purposes. So that was a slightly different thing, and that was a different world.
Yes. I mean, you need to be aware that there is that aspect that they may ask you for additional consent for that your test results could be used for, basically scientific academic research. So there may be slightly different regulations relating to that if you've given permission for that to be done. So make sure you distinguish between that and make a decision what you want to go for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other aspect is, and something you must be aware of, but can't really do much to guard against, is the fact that, of course, when you do test your DNA and you come up with matches, you may discover there are matches, quite unexpected matches. You may find other close relatives there, half siblings even in some cases. You may find evidence of illegitimacies, adoption. All these sort of issues can result in people popping up on your match list who you weren't expecting to see, and they may be quite closely related. So it's something to be dealt with fairly carefully if you're going to be contacting these people. Okay.
And I suppose also really consider, whether you should be testing or not, if that's something that's really going to be an issue for you.
Well, yes. I mean, if you do have a particular concern, then it might decide you against testing at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens with many people, but you really do need to be aware that can happen.
Yeah, it can happen.
It's not, I wouldn't say most people encounter that, but it's not uncommon that it does happen.
I suppose the more people that are testing, the greater the percentages of the
well, that's right. And there's quite a considerable number of people testing now because they are adopted or they do know of illegitimacies and they want to find out who perhaps their genetic father was or grandfather, who their biological parents were if they're adopted, that type of thing. So more and more of these people testing for that very specific purpose rather than strictly what we would call genealogical purposes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right. Okay. So that's ethics. Now, another area relates to closeness of relationships. Got a question from Anne Rybelt, for example, who has matched somebody who's a possible fourth cousin. She's not got any overlapping ancestors through documentary evidence so far. She's wondering if they are related or if it's just because there's a descent from a particular area in Germany, because she and the match both have ancestors from that area. Well, really it depends on the number of shared centimorgans, which, as you probably realise, is the main measure of sharing of segments of DNA. And a good idea is to make the use of a particularly useful tool which has just become available very recently, which is called the Shared Centimorgan Project tool. Now, it's something that's been devised by Blaine Bettinger, who you'll know is an author on genetic genealogy, well-respected genealogist in the United States, and we have recommended his books on the course. So he has been working on the Shared Centimorgan Project for several years now, and there's an interactive tool now available which you can make use of the results from that, and it's easily accessed on the DNA Painter website. So if you go to the DNA Painter website, you'll see a link there to the Shared Centimorgan tool. It's a very good idea to make use of this tool rather than just depending on predicted relationships. the predictive relationships which come from the company test sites, because they're quite rough and ready. So it's a good idea to go to DNA Painter, check the Shared Centimorgan Project tool. This allows you, it can be used in two ways. There's a table which gives you a visual representation of the various relationships and the number of expected centimorgans that could be shared by that relationship. It gives a range of centimorgans and an average for each relationship. And also the actual main interactive part of the tool is that if you have a specific number of centimorgans you share with a match, you can type that in, either number of centimorgans or a percentage of shared DNA. You can type these in, and it will then bring up a list of probabilities of the different relationships within which that share of DNA might be a possibility. So we had one questioner who actually quoted a number of centimorgans.
Donna,
Donna Jones mentioned that she has a 98 centimorgan share. She'd done a test with Ancestry DNA and uploaded to GEDmatch, and there's a 98 centimorgan match. So that's quite considerable. If you do check that on this tool that I'm talking about here, you will see that it's likely to be some form of second or third cousin relationship. So it could be a half second cousin once removed, that type of thing, or a similar situation with at the third cousin level. So it's relatively close. Donna is asking, how can she better utilize information from the chromosome browser? Wondering about suggestions for reading. Well, I would suggest, obviously, the books by Blaine Bettinger that we've mentioned on the course. The other main source of reading on genetic genealogy is basically the blogs, because there are many blogs out there which look into very specific aspects of using genetic genealogy, and lots of examples and case studies and so on how you can use it. So I would suggest having a look there. The other way to find out a bit more is, and this is the answer in most cases, is try and do more testing of your known relatives, because you can then start to narrow down, for example, narrowing down whether a match might be on the maternal side of your family or the paternal side, that type of thing. Think about trying to test, if possible, cousins, first cousins and second cousins, that type of thing. And just since I've mentioned DNA Painter, the Shared Centimorgan Project tool is just one aspect, but of course the main aspect of DNA Painter is related to what we call chromosome mapping or chromosome painting. And chromosome mapping is trying to assign particular segments of DNA to specific ancestors, which is possible to do in some cases if there's sufficient testing. And DNA Painter allows you to visualize that, allows you to paint in specific segments into your chromosomes and have it visually displayed on screen online. It's quite an easy tool to use. It doesn't take too much learning, and it's proving very popular. It's a very recent introduction online. So it's well worth having a look at that.
Yeah, great. I'll say in the forum for the live stream on week 6, I'll put in all of the names of the different online spaces with their URLs, probably on Monday, though, after this is done. So if you're not catching what Graham's saying, don't worry, I'll put stuff up. Yeah.
Right. Just one or two more points on relating to Anna's question, just taking that a bit further. I would say, she's not been able to establish a match through documentary evidence. I mean, that's often the case, because you could be talking about third, fourth cousins. It might be relatively distant as far as you're concerned, and documentary evidence may not be easily available. So that can often be the case. In Anna's particular case, it is very likely that you probably are related to this person. And the question of DNA being shared because ancestors from a particular area, that does happen, but it tends to be very small segments. So there's small enough segments to be basically disregarded, and they would be regarded as what's called identical by state rather than identical by descent. So it's because of the general shared DNA within a particular population in a particular geographic area. Right, okay, right, well I think we can move on from that aspect. Oh yes, now the question from Paul C.
Yes, this is a good one.
Who's interested in trying to test a lock of hair from a dead, his mother's father, basically. So he believes he has a photograph, and within the photograph, within the frame, there is a lock of hair which he feels must belong to his grandfather, and he's wondering, is there a possibility to make use of this, to test it, do DNA testing this, and try and find out a bit more about ancestry. This is something that is becoming possible, this type of thing, and probably will become more common as time goes on. It's not generally marketed by companies as far as I'm aware at the moment. And of course, as Paul says, there is the issue of contamination. So it's a question, is it going to be possible to get usable DNA extracted from the item? And of course, there's a wide range of items. And there's one particular example that I was going to mention in relation to this, quite a well-known case of an individual called Anthea Ring, who was an abandoned baby. She was abandoned under a bush about 80 years ago.
Wow.
As a baby. And various DNA testing was done, and it was established that her father, her genetic father, was actually one of 6 brothers from Ireland, but it wasn't at that point possible to tell which of the brothers it was. But subsequent to that being discovered, some old letters were found, some 30-year-old letters from one of the brothers, and they did manage, Living DNA was the company that actually did this, which is a UK-based company, which is fairly recently in the field of testing for genealogy. They were able to extract DNA from saliva, from a stamp from one of these old letters, and they were able to discover from that this particular brother who left the letters was the father of Anthea Ring, the abandoned baby.
That's amazing.
So it can be done in some cases, and Paul's particularly saying he's wondering if it can be done in the UK. As I say, this was a UK company. As I said, as far as I know, they don't actually advertise this service, but I'm sure it'd be worth contacting them, Living DNA, and having a look to see if they might be willing to do something for you.
Yeah, and because they don't advertise it, we have no idea what the likely cost would be. I think you just need to contact them and ask if it's possible at all. So,
Actually, it might be a good link in here to talk. We don't have really any specific questions about admixture, or as it's often known, ethnicity, but more accurately described as admixture. But just mentioning Living DNA there, the UK company Living DNA is doing a lot of work at specifically identifying DNA from particular regions of Britain and Ireland. So unlike the other companies who tend to lump the whole of Britain together, Living DNA are being a bit more specific in their designation and breaking British Isles up into quite a number of different regions to identify your admixture results. And I was going to mention also admixture, we had a question from Dave Nelson.
Yeah.
Now, he says his wife and I both tested with Ancestry, linked their results to their trees. I've got many matches, but many of these people don't have linked trees. So it's quite possible that, well, we certainly know that an awful lot of people who are testing now, particularly with Ancestry, are testing because of their interest in the admixture results. So they may not be as interested in recent genealogy as somebody who tests for that purpose. So they may not have trees linked to their results at all, and they may not have trees of any sort. But the fact that somebody doesn't have a linked tree available doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a tree. They may have a tree which is not linked to a DNA test. They may have a tree which is online elsewhere, out with the Ancestry platform, or they may have a tree that they've created and they haven't uploaded it, so it may not be online at all. It may be just sitting in a genealogy software package. Or, of course, they may just not have a tree of any sort. So there are various possibilities, there. But basically, the thing is, you just need to contact them, really, and find out. And you may discover that they've got something ready-made, or at least can provide you with some genealogical information based on documentary evidence, which might give you some answers.
Or indeed, you might never hear from them. I mean, I've certainly had that.
Yes, well, yeah, of course, that's another issue that, particularly sites like 23andMe, who focus quite a lot on health-related issues, if people are testing for that reason, it has been found that they don't tend to reply to genealogical inquiries in many cases. So that might be another issue that you might encounter. Right. Now, Anne Smith was asking about suggestions for which test to go with. Okay, now I'm presuming that Anne probably means which type of autosomal test. I just mentioned that the other options would be obviously Y-DNA or mtDNA. Basically, the main place to test both of those now is Family Tree DNA. They have the largest database of Y-DNA test results for genealogy. So they're the major option for that now. But coming on to autosomal DNA, of course, there are the four major companies, Ancestry being by far the largest, and you've got 23andMe, Family Tree DNA as well, and MyHeritage. And then there are others, as I mentioned, Living DNA, who's come fairly recently into the field, the UK company, becoming more important. So how would you decide between which of the companies? Well, it's a good idea, ideally, to try and get into as many databases as possible, because it increases your matching possibilities. Ancestry DNA's database is by far the largest. So, I mean, that's probably the obvious one to start with. Some of the companies allow uploads. So Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage will allow uploads of results from other companies. So there's that way of getting access to their databases. And of course, there's also third-party utilities. In this case, particularly GEDmatch is the best known. And that allows test results from all the major companies to be uploaded to that. And you've got the possibility of matching with people that have tested with other companies as a result of that. Of course, it does depend if those folk have also taken the effort to upload the results to GEDmatch. But it's a large database and a very useful one, and it's also very good in that it provides a lot of additional tools to allow you to analyse your results. Something that's the major downside with Ancestry. I mean, the big advantage with Ancestry is the large size of the database for matching, but Ancestry is quite short on tools to use with your results, particularly the fact that they don't have a chromosome browser. So a very good option to upload to GEDmatch and get these extra tools and facilities available to you. So yeah, I think that probably sort of covers that one. Gives you some pointers as to what to do in regard to testing.
Yeah, good.
Right. Now, let's see if we've anything else we want to cover. Oh yes, Donna Gardner was asking, yes, her great-grandfather's birth certificate, there's no name given, and she's looking at DNA as a way around that. And yes, this is very often the case with many folk in this sort of situation, where there's a likely legitimacy further back and the father's name's not been given on the birth certificate. So in that particular instance, the particular focus here would be looking for people in the range of third cousins, if it's the great-grandfather who's at issue. So DNA testing, autosomal DNA testing, looking at your match list to see if there's anybody coming up round about third to fourth cousin level. As I said earlier, check the number of centimorgans or percentage of matching DNA on the Shared Centimorgan Project tool, and see which different relationships that suggests might be possible with that share of DNA. And hopefully you might get some clues from that as to some relatives through that unknown father's line.
I presume if that's a paternal line and Donna had a brother, a full brother, then he could do a Y?
Yes, of
test,
course,
and
that's right. Yes, that would be useful as well.
Right.
So remember that the Y DNA comes down the male line, all the way unbroken male lines. But if that exists, then that's a good way to do a Y DNA test. See if there's a predominant surname amongst your matches, which is often a guide to the actual genetic surname origin that you have. It's not always the case that will necessarily be turn out to be correct, but very often is. Yes. Okay. We've got one other aspect I wanted to talk about, which was relating to phasing. Susan Points was saying that if you take an ATDNA test, is there any way to tell which matches are on your maternal side and which are on your paternal side? Now, obviously this would be very useful, and it's not something that's currently done to any extent by the testing companies. There are some aspects of phasing that they use, but they don't really fully report the results. 23andMe do report their admixture results in a phased manner. So they'll say on your maternal side you're British, and on your paternal side you're Irish, that type of thing. But as regards actual matching, it's not a thing that's really available at present on the test companies' results pages. What you can do is there are facilities on GEDmatch to do some phasing. The ideal situation is if you're able to test both parents and one child. But of course, very many people are not able to do that for various reasons. You could also test one parent and a child. That can also work. And if you can do that, and have the tests uploaded to all the tests uploaded to GEDmatch, they will create a new kit for the parents. And it's basically a half kit because it's producing the results that you would have got from, say, your mother, which is half, it's one of the pair of chromosomes, and another half kit for your father's results. And that can be done. And then that can then, of course, be matched against other individuals in the GEDmatch database. So hopefully narrowing down very significantly matches to one or other side, the maternal or paternal side. Family Tree DNA also have a facility called Family Matching, which goes sort of some way towards at least predicting phasing. What it does is it uses test results from fairly close relatives, so from parents up to third cousins, actually. And you need to have the test results uploaded to Family Tree DNA. You also need to have a family tree either uploaded or created directly on the Family Tree DNA website and link the test kits to the names in the tree. So if that's all linked up, then Family Tree DNA will attempt to predict the phasing. And there's a maternal tab on the matches list, and there's a paternal tab, and there's a both tab, which is basically pretty much confined to siblings. But if you're able to do this, make use of this facility, it will put people into those individual tabs. Now, it's not absolutely guaranteed to be accurate necessarily, because it is based on other relatives often, and not necessarily a result from both your parents. But it can be quite helpful in predicting, making predictions.
Yeah. I didn't know that's possible. We got that last minute question from Janice about the difference between a Y37 and a Y67 test.
Yes.
And this is a Y-DNA test, so the male.
So the Y-DNA tests then, the basic tests are usually the basic one. The level that people go in at now is a 37 marker test. And what it does is it tests for STRs, or short tandem repeats, at 37 different markers on the genome. So there are 37 different locations at which the test is done. And at each location you'll get a numerical value or values telling you how many repeats, how many short tandem repeats there are at that particular location. So you'll get 37 of those results if it's a 37 marker. And obviously if you're doing a 67, it's that much more locations it's tested at. So it's tested at 67 different locations, and will give you numerical values at each of those 67. And then, of course, you can go higher than that. You can go up to 111. And then even beyond that, if you're going to more advanced testing, there's things like Family Tree DNA's Big Y500 test, which is basically a test on SNPs, but the 500 is a recent introduction, and that refers to additional STR results that are reported. In fact, there's a potential maximum, if you've done the 111 test and the Big Y500, you've got a potential maximum of 561 STRs. Wow. It's unlikely that you would have the maximum. I mean, some of them usually are poor reads, so they're described as no calls. So, for example, I think in my result, I've maybe got about 530, something like that. But there are additional ones. The only drawback at the moment is that the additional STRs you get with the Big Y500, there's no matching process for that at present. So there's only a matching process up to 111. Possibly it's something that will be introduced over the next year or two. We haven't really heard yet. But otherwise, it'd be a question of if you did want to make use of those STRs, basically you would have to compare another individual test and just look at STRs individually, really, or manually.
Yeah. But in a case like Janice's, I suppose, what I mean, obviously the Y37 is going to be cheaper than the Y67 test.
Yes.
But if you're going in at that basic level, and for this particular case, where there's an adoption challenge, would you start with a 37 or a 67?
Well, it's usually best to start with 37. I would say, because once you've done the test, then you can just upgrade. You don't need to do another test kit again. You can just easily upgrade that result to a 67. It depends very much on the genetic grouping that you are in and the surnames in that group. Sometimes with a 37, you might get quite a good indication of what the surname, say it was an adoption, of what the likely surname would be. In other cases, if there are vast numbers of matches at 37, you're not getting very good definition, and it might be important to upgrade to 67 markers. So it has to be looked at case by case, really. I mean, 67 is a good general level now, though, if you can do that.
Great. Well, I think that's the DNA questions. We've got just a couple of non-DNA questions, some of which I've actually given answers to on the forum on the page on FutureLearn. But Helen was asking about going back and returning to databases and transcribed records and seeing how often you should check back for new evidence. And one of the things that I've done to try to keep up with what's going on in the genealogical world and new parish records, that kind of stuff that's being uploaded, is to actually get myself on a lot of the blogs and newsletters that are coming in, and those give you an idea of new things that have been released. And if I note that there's something in a particular area, then I'll go off and have a look at those, and all of the different databases will have a place where you can sign up for newsletters. But I would suggest maybe every 6 months to a year. I would say probably once a year might be a good idea to go off and have a look. If you've got somebody that you're stuck on or want further research, and you might make it a yearly thing, like in the new year. Right, this is what I'm going to do with my time off over the new year, is go and look at all the updates on the databases. So.
Certainly a lot means they're all being continually updated, quite a large amount of material, and can answer questions that you've had for you. I mean, I had one particular instance. It was a baptism I'd been couldn't find for about 30 years, and because an indexing project had been done by the local Family History Society, had been completed and uploaded to one of the major genealogy sites, I was able to get the answer to that question. So it's certainly well worth keeping check on things.
Yeah, absolutely. So just keep checking. Steph M was asking, and Elaine M were both asking about the note-taking software that I'd mentioned on the other live stream, and that was Evernote. And it's free. It is one where you can clip websites, you can take images from websites and save it. You don't need to then remember the URL, that kind of thing, because what it does is it changes the clips of the websites or whatever else it might be that you're taking from the internet. It puts it into OCR, which means that you can then search the text of the website or the book page or whatever. So you can just go ahead and search for that point. And on the forum, I put up some information on that. just a couple of other quick questions before we round off. Leslie was curious about a ancestor who died in 1984 in California, and she basically has his parents and first wife, but there's no trace of siblings or the second or third marriages, which she knows about from family connections. She was curious about whether it's possible for someone to just disappear from records. And I would say, well, yeah, it is possible. People disguise their identity by using aliases. People have lived lives underground, if you like, for a number of years by obscuring their identity, and that maybe that this is what's happened with that person. It also might be, of course, that if you're only looking at online records, that they were in an area that just doesn't have those records up as of yet. So you've just not come across them. But it is possible. It's also possible that it could be an issue with mistranscription. The name might have just got so mangled in the databases. But some people do want to vanish for whatever reason, and it does happen.
Be incomplete records sometimes as well.
Yeah. So
portions of records have been lost. All sorts of reasons.
All sorts of stuff. And then Frankie was asking about finding out about the lives of female ancestors and contextualizing the lives of women in her family. And she was particularly looking at Middlesex, which is kind of the area in and around London. Again, Frankie, I've put up some ideas about that on the forum for the live stream, so you might have a look at those. But basically what I did is I just did a Google search on terms around female lives, London. I didn't know the time period that you were particularly interested in, so I just put in a Victorian era, Edwardian, 20th century, and there were quite a few books and websites that popped up. So you might try doing that. I've also got some books at home that look at the history of women in the United Kingdom. And on Monday, I'll put some information up about those. Actually, I might do it over the weekend as well. So, which may or may not be of use to you. But there's going to be lots of books and articles and things like that out there for you. So I think that's all of our questions, and we're out of time. But just a big thank you to everybody for taking part in the current run of the course. It's been really fun, and I'll miss logging on every day and looking at the comments and the questions that have come in, and seeing what's up. We're, as far as I know, going to run the course again in November. I've been asked to run it again. So if you've got folks who are interested in taking it, or if you want to take it again, you can certainly do that. On the FutureLearn website, there's a place where you can register your interest for a new run of the course. So you can do that. That's on the main genealogy, researching your family tree website, just the basic one on FutureLearn. And then I may very well run the course again in the new year, in January or February time. So that might be another place to go. So but if you've got any questions, we'll keep monitoring the forums for another wee while, but then that will stop once the course ends. And Sunday is our last official day. But in the meantime, keep putting things up on the forums, and thank you all very much for taking part. And a big thank you to Graham for all of your energy and input, not just on the live stream, but also in the course as well. It's really great thing. So thank you all, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to wherever you are in the world. Thanks.
Thanks.